Hello, and welcome to our program, Where God Weeps, a program where we speak about the situation of the suffering and persecuted church around the world. 2017 witnessed 125 years of the Catholic Church in Zambia. While an occasion of joy, the backdrop of difficult economic realities in the country continued to throw a shadow. More than 80% of the rural population lives below the poverty line, and many rural families rely on subsistence farming. Chronic food insecurity and a lack of access to clean water stunts nearly half of Zambian children under 5 years old. During the so-called hungry season, when food is scarce, many families eat only one meal a day. To tell us more about the successes and the challenges facing the church in Zambia, it's my very great privilege to welcome His Excellency Bishop Valentine Kalumba, the Bishop of the capital, Livingstone. Your Excellency, thank you for being with us here today in our program.
It's a pleasure to be here, Mark.
Your Excellency, you got the call from Pope Francis in September of 2016 after you had only been 11 years a priest. What was it like when you received the call from Pope Francis to become a bishop?
First of all, it was, as usual, a shock for me. I didn't...
You thought, what have I done wrong?
I didn't expect that. I belong to a religious congregation, and in my mind, I was thinking that being a bishop is the priority of the diocesan priest. And for me to be called upon that I have been appointed a bishop, I was surprised, I was shocked.
Did you want to refuse? Did you want to say no?
Well, when I met the nuncio, I asked him, I said, is there an opportunity for me to say no? And he said, unless there's something that they don't know about me, which is so serious. Otherwise, I had no chance of saying no.
So what did you went to pray? How did you digest this decision-making process?
I was called to the nuncio, and then the nuncio took me to a special room. Then he broke the news to me, and he asked me to go into the chapel to pray for a while. I think it was 1 hour before I could make any decision. And you know, when you are in a shock, how do you pray? it was quite difficult for me. So I was just saying to myself, is it true that it's me? And the 1 hour went so fast. Then he came to me and said, have you prayed? Now it's time to make a decision. And I said, okay, yeah, I will take it.
And no regrets?
No regrets so far.
I think God's plan is clear.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a little bit about your own background, your family, the religious life, the lived faith in your family. Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yes, I was born in 1967 and in a family of 9 children.
What number are you?
I'm number 8, second from the last. And my father at one point tried to join priesthood, but in those days he was the only one who was educated in the family. So the priest advised him to go back and take care of the father and the mother. And that's how he couldn't go ahead, but he became a teacher and later on a headmaster. And I was born in the mining town of Zambia, which is in the northern part of the capital city, Lusaka.
It's a rural area, or is it a suburb?
It's urban. It's one of the mining towns.
Oh, okay, it's mining.
Not rural, yes.
I understand.
Yeah, so that's where I grew up, and I did my secondary education there. After I finished my secondary education, I joined the bank, Standard Chartered Bank.
So you were going to be a banker?
Yes, I worked. Actually, prior to that, I joined the Zambian Air Force for 3 years. Then I left. I joined the Standard Chartered Bank for 3 years. Then after that, I still felt a call to serve God as a priest.
So it had been with you throughout this whole period?
Yes, actually, because my family is so Catholic. All of us are Catholics, and my father was insisting on being in the Catholic Church. Yeah, so along I was an altar server before, so it has been part
It had
of
always
me.
been kind of working in you, I suppose.
Yes, yes. You know, where you are working, earning a bit of money, but you are not getting that satisfaction. So it was always pushing me. And eventually I made up my mind. I said, well, maybe this is where God wants me to be.
Your father must be, if I can say, he must be proud. And now his son is not only a priest, which is what he had aspired to at the beginning, but now also a bishop.
Yeah, and unfortunately he didn't see me to priesthood.
To priesthood.
He passed on a year before my ordination. And he is seeing me from a higher position.
He's seeing from a better space. Yes, a better place.
Yeah.
And in the year 2000, you joined the missionary oblates. Why did you decide to become a missionary? Why not a diocesan priest? What was it that attracted you to missionary life?
And actually, I started as a diocesan seminarian. And for 7 years, I studied as a diocesan seminarian. And in the program, there is 1 year where you go back to the diocese in the parish to experience part of parish life before you continue with your studies. So when I went back to the diocese, something struck me. You know, there are some parishes which are in poor areas. And for me, I felt drawn to such parishes, but mostly they were neglected. So I felt drawn to them, and I wanted to be more with the so-called poor people. Yeah, but actually, in faith, they taught me a lot. Yeah, so that's how I...
What was it in particular that they taught you?
Like in their simplicity, you know, they would come to God very happy. You know, they wouldn't worry about not having material things. For them, what was important was to be with God and that God loved them. So that touched me. And I started looking for a congregation which was missionary, because I knew missionaries mainly worked in poor areas, and they mainly worked with the so-called neglected people. And apparently, the missionary oblates...
they saw the same.
Yes, so that's how I joined. Although before changing, there were a lot of talking in the diocese, like, why am I joining a missionary congregation? And yeah.
Your Excellency, you then went to the mining town of Kabwe, which had... I want to come a little bit later to the question of your experiences there. But in Kabwe, you realized or received the impression of what it meant to be really out in a rural area where, and I quote here a statement that you made at the time in an interview, your missionary assignment, you said, quote, "We try and get to these chapels at least once a month. In the past, they might not see a priest for 6 months or so." What challenges did you suddenly confront being out in these really rural parts of Zambia?
You see, these are places where they are far from town, as we know. And in Kabwe, there is a shortage of priests. So this parish where I was assigned was a sub-parish, and then it had some outstations. Yes.
No?
And you know, you'd find very rare that a priest would go there. So when I went there, and luckily enough, we were 3 in the community, so we made it a program that at least in a month, we visit 1 or 2 of these outstations. And you could see people crying for priests. You know, they wanted to have access to sacraments, but they couldn't. So my initial program was let's go often, so that at least they may have access, especially receiving the Eucharist, and some of them issues of marriage, where they would not receive because they have issues of marriage, which when you look at them, some of them were not even canonical, that they are bound to receive. So all they needed was someone to
for the catechesis and education.
Yeah.
It must be very humbling to come to areas like this where the people are crying to receive you and the gift that you bring, which is the sacraments.
Yeah, it makes you realize that, wow, I think this is where I'm supposed to be, where people are in need of a priest. So when you go there, they will really make use of you.
You come back exhausted.
You come back tired. You do counseling, you hear confessions, you are everything there. Yeah, and there is a lot of activity when you are there.
Now, the Zambian church has made great use of catechists. What is the importance, particularly in the lack of priests in some of these rural areas, of the role of the catechist?
The catechists, these are the people who are living in the areas where the priests are most needed. So they are the teachers of faith in the absence of the priests. They are very, very important.
So they kind of prepare the ground for you to come then
Exactly.
for the sacramental questions.
Exactly.
Your Excellency, to have a better understanding of the question of missionary work and also this question of catechists, we have now 2 short films which we're going to watch, showing what it really means, this missionary life in Zambia.
Często my wierzymy w mity, które się słyszy o Afrykanach. Ale ludzie w Zambii są naprawdę serdeczni, bardzo serdeczni i też bardzo zaangażowani w życie Kościoła. Oni przychodzą do pomocy przy budowie, oni robili bloki na ten dom, przychodzą każdego dnia, opiekują się tą misją, naprawdę troszczą się o to. Oni uważają to za swoje i są wdzięczni za to, że coś się robi wśród nich. To jest takie fajne i zaczyna się mówić w ich języku. Oni często mówią, a to nie jest biały, to jest ksiądz katolicki, to jest nasz. Rzeczywiście mają takie myślenie, że jeżeli ktoś przyjeżdża, ma tą chęć i wkłada wysiłek, żeby nauczyć się języka miejscowego, to nie jest biały, to już jest ktoś miejscowy. No i niestety ciągle doświadczamy tego, że jest brak księży. W tej chwili ja jestem jeden ksiądz na 2 parafie, na ponad 40 kaplic. Także myślę, że trzeba się ciągle modlić o powołanie, żeby księża ciągle przyjeżdżali na misję, bo ciągle jest ten głód Ewangelii. Wraz z moimi ludźmi jesteśmy naprawdę wdzięczni Wam za to, że mamy ten dom, za to, że wkrótce będą mogli tu zamieszkać księża i będą mogli duszpasterzować wśród tych ludzi, będą głosić Ewangelię. Ja mówię, absolutnie bez Waszej pomocy nie byłoby to możliwe.
There's a big challenge when it comes to accessing rural parishes because the roads are very bad and it becomes very dangerous for a priest because sometimes you take up a road very narrow, some roads you have to cross the rivers. First of all, you have just to surrender yourself to God, to say, now I'm doing the work of God, even if I die here, it is some kind of a sacrifice.
This is the car for Twingi Parish. It was involved in the road accident and then it went off the road.
I call it baptism by the road, the real pastoral challenge that we go through. It's difficult for the priests, for the catechists to assess the mission. When you come and when you go out there, you know what we are talking about and what we go through.
My father was a mechanic. When I entered the seminary, of course, I had some basic knowledge about mechanics. And then after seminary, I undertook a training in mechanics, and then I was appointed here. But of course, it hasn't taken away my responsibility as a priest. Because in the morning, I do pray with the Christians, and then after that, I'm found here.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our program Where God Weeps. We're speaking with Bishop Valentine Kalumba, the Bishop of Livingstone, Zambia, and we're speaking about missionary life. Your Excellency, thank you for being with us here again on our program.
You're welcome.
How do you, as a young bishop, how do you evangelize? Where do you weight your priorities, particularly for the youth?
Our youth, Zambia is one of the countries that when you rate it in terms of unemployment, it's one of the countries that has a high unemployment rate. And most of our young people, they finish schools, but they have nothing to do. So it's actually a very big challenge in terms of evangelization. How do you preach to the youth who have nothing to do? You go there, you preach quite okay, but they'll tell you, give us work. They are on the streets. And it's a very dicey area. But I don't know. I don't know what we are trying, but they're crying, which you look at it, you say, yes, this is a valid point. There is no employment. And you talk to the government, nothing is coming. I don't know. We are stuck, actually.
Are the youth still concerned about their faith? Do they still live their faith? Is the spirituality, is the faith still something important to them? Or are they being, attracted, like we see in many of Western European and North American cultures, attracted by secularization and by materialism and everything that comes along with it?
Largely, they are still holding on to faith. But you can see nowadays with the social media, and there are these elements coming in, the influence of the Western culture. So they would want sometimes to, as we're talking about employment, anyone who promises employment, they don't care whatever kind of employment, so that they would go. Yeah, so that's the danger which is coming. And they would also want to live comfortably. When you Google, you go around, you see how your friends in the other countries are living. So they would want to be like them. So they would do anything possible to make themselves comfortable. But I would say they are still faithful to the church. Yeah.
I raise this question in part because you were for a while the director of Radio Liesl, a Catholic radio network which covered much of the western part of Zambia, if I'm not mistaken. How effective is radio and media as a tool for evangelization, particularly where you have so many rural areas where the people may not necessarily see a priest, as we've spoken about already?
Yeah, I would mainly talk about radio because that's where I worked there from actually between 2011 for about 3 years or so. At radio, we had a policy. It's to educate, to inform, entertain, and then evangelize. And it worked out so well because the radio reaches most of the parts where the priest can't go, or some parts where the priest may go there maybe 6 months, and then again 6 months, but the radio will be there. So we took advantage of the radio because of the wider coverage area to explain our faith, the catechesis, and also to inform them about their rights, and also to educate them about what the political leaders are doing, what they're promising, if it's worthy following or not. So the radio is a good tool even up to now of disseminating the good news.
Your Excellency, just to have a better idea of what we're talking about in terms of evangelization through media, we're going to look at two short stories, one about Radio Musitunya, which is in your diocese, and the Catholic television TV Lumen, so that we see what this means on a day-to-day level.
Radio Musitunya in Livingstone.
In Africa, in Zambia in particular, a radio is still key for evangelization. A radio is very, very cardinal to the areas like here. We do a lot of evangelization. We have many priests, sisters, and people who come to make programs, economical, spiritual, and social programs. We tell the people what is happening in their area. The majority of the human resource are the volunteers. We don't pay them. There's nothing we give them, but that we normally appreciate them. So in last year, we thought of having to source for funds to buy the bicycles for the volunteers. It is just a token of appreciating that they can be reaching the radio station faster than walking. They take a lot of time. The tower really is our greatest need, in fact. The people who made them, they were not experts. People or young people from parishes who were trying their best to put things together. Somewhere it is bent, some knobs have fallen off. It's a risk. Anything can happen. It's not really in good shape. There are certain areas the signal of Radio Musitunya is lost. They cannot just get it. It is our greatest need.
To evangelization, we use all means at our disposal. Then one of the means at our disposal was identified as information and communications technology. This is a means which we must make use of in order to reach out to as many people as possible.
I'm Father Winfield Kunda, and I'm the communications secretary for the conference here in Zambia. But I also help out in the TV production studios. These are some of the publications that we have done over the years. Bishop's consecration, youth programs, mainly it's just documentaries. Broadcasting is not that cheap. I have to tell you, it's not that cheap. Especially it's religious broadcasting. You need equipment.
We in a developing country, but also a developing church, we may be able to support ourselves, but for the time being, we are not. Modern people, they just don't want to hear, they want to see. And that's why television is a tool of evangelization which is extremely important.
Pope Francis said, can't we change the angle from which we prepare our stories, from which we write our documentaries? Yes, there is a lot of suffering, a lot of negativity, we would say, in the world. But still, we can communicate the good news of hope.
Welcome back to our program, ladies and gentlemen. We're here with His Excellency Bishop Valentine Kalumba, the Bishop of the Livingstone Archdiocese in Zambia. And we're speaking about media and the role of evangelization in this country. Your Excellency, we've seen now these two short programs about evangelization and how media is a tool. Where do you now set your priorities in terms of your pastoral work? Where do you see the vision for you for the future, and where can we help? How can we be assistance to you?
First of all, I have to mention, like in my diocese, we have very few priests, And the diocese is quite vast. It's 58,000 square kilometers. So when you cut across,
it's a long drive.
It's a long drive. So most of the areas still are not reached by the priests. So my emphasis would be on developing catechetical programs to teach the catechists, and hoping that these catechists, since they'll be coming from these different areas, when we teach them so well, they will be able to disseminate and preach to the people in the outstations especially. And I have a wild dream. You know, I'm looking at maybe setting up a catechetical center in the diocese, since we don't have anything like that. So I'm looking at setting up a catechetical center where, if we bring in different people who would be catechists from different parts of the diocese, we train them. If they are 50, 100, we train them so well. Then when we send them out, we will be assured that faith will be given to the people there.
And that they in turn can formate the formators, the future formators.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because, you know, slowly we are seeing the coming in of Islam. So that's another worry. Then we have these other churches, like Seventh-day Adventists, who are really pouncing on the Catholics. They have found it easy prey. Most of Catholics, they would say, I'm a Catholic, but they don't know their faith. So it's easy for them to take members from our church. So we want, if we train well these catechists, they go and teach the faith, we hope to maintain our membership. So it's a big dream I have.
But it's a beautiful dream. We pray for this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for being with us today on our program.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today on Where God Weeps. If you'd like to know more about the work of His Excellency Bishop Valentine Kalumba in Zambia, or perhaps how you might be able to help, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.